I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal, the show where celebrities share stories about the foods they love most, and we dig into the history, culture, or science of those meals with experts from around the world. Today on the program, comedian Paula Poundstone. Paula started performing stand-up in the 1980s.
When I was very, very broke, I ate sugar and salt.
Packets?
Yeah, I would just eat salt.
For dinner.
Yeah, and then I would eat sugar.
Paula hosts a weekly comedy podcast called Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. She's a regular panelist on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. And she was the voice of Forgetter Paula in the films Inside Out and Inside Out 2. Paula is taking off on her latest countrywide comedy tour tomorrow. Hopefully, Paula is no longer eating sugar and salt packets for her meals. But if you think that fame and fortune turned Paula into a fancy gourmand, you would be wrong. Paula thinks ringdings are the perfect food. So I'll chat with the owner of the Ringding Bar in New York City. That's coming up later in the show. But right now, let's drop into my conversation with Paula Poundstone. Let's start towards the beginning of your career when you started traveling around the country to do stand-up, and you were not only traveling in a Greyhound bus, you were living in a Greyhound bus?
I did, because you could buy this thing back then. It was called an Ameripass. And basically, $150. It lasted for a month. It was a blank ticket book for anywhere you wanted to go. Say I wanted to check out the club scene in Denver. So I would arrive in Denver whenever I arrived. Say it was noon. Get off the bus. I'd put my suitcase into a locker. But before I left the Greyhound station, I would find a destination that was about 4 hours away. I'd have my ticket filled out for this 4 hours away place, but I would do it for the last trip out of there. So say maybe it was midnight. I'd come back at midnight.
She'd hop on the bus, sleep 4 hours, and as soon as she arrived in the new destination, she would buy a ticket back to Denver so she could sleep another 4 hours on the bus. So the point was, even though you planned to stay in Denver longer, you needed to take this trip so you had somewhere to sleep, and then you were going to spend the next day in Denver again.
Exactly.
That is cuckoo. Wow.
Yeah.
That's smart, though.
I think I was 19.
How long did you do this for?
Well, I would do it for a month at a time. Looking back, for the most part, I think it was kind of great. My memory of it is that it was great. If I could get 2 seats to myself, I would sleep with my legs going up the window.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you have to learn a lot of creative sleeping positions in order to travel for really long ways.
Were you always somebody that could sleep anywhere, or because of that, can you sleep anywhere now?
No, I think I always was pretty toteable, and I can sleep anywhere, and I do. Those were also those years where I had no real responsibilities. Mm-hmm. So long as I could sleep and I could get the occasional bite of food, it didn't really matter where I was. Mm-hmm. I didn't have kids. I didn't have pets. I didn't have anybody that I was paying for. And so it was kind of great that way. Once I went to a place, for example, Chicago, when the people at the club, I went to Zany's in Chicago, which was, I believe it's still there, and it was a great club. I think I asked for the yellow pages or something so I could get a cab to take me to the bus station. And when the other comics that I met there realized what I was doing, they were like, oh, yeah, no, you know what? So I stayed at people's houses, or apartments back then. It was mostly apartments that I barely knew. Mm-hmm. And it was great.
So what were you eating when you were a young adult with no money?
Well, when I was on the Greyhound bus, I mostly, in my yellow day pack, I had a container of double stuffed Oreos. And back then I enjoyed milk occasionally. So I would get to the Greyhound station, and Greyhound stations back then had cafeterias. Like a decent sized Greyhound station would have a cafeteria, which seems so strange now. Anyway, so I would get milk to go with my double stuffed Oreos.
You were like a kid running away from home, like with Oreo cookies in your little bindle with the red and white polka dots, and you're getting milk and eating it on the bus while you ran away.
I would tie my sneakers to the backpack. And so they would dangle. And it did really have this look of like, it was Chaplin-esque. But I guess even before that, when I was 18, I had taken a Greyhound bus to Orlando because I wanted to be a bear in the Disney World parade. They didn't hire me, which was probably the greatest stroke of luck in my life. So I worked at the International House of Pancakes, the graveyard shift instead, which I always tell people was my second dream.
Was it?
No. No.
I just ate at an IHOP for the first time a couple months ago.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And my friend was like, I'm telling you, it's the best pancakes. They really are. I'm like, really? Are they really the best? But I will say very politically that they were not my favorite pancakes that I've ever had.
To me, pancakes are pancakes. I mean, you'd have to make them really badly for them to stand out in any way. But what's funny is the first job I ever had as a teenager when I was 16, like not a babysitting job or a lawn raking job. The first like job I ever had was at a place called Bickford's Pancake House in Natick, Massachusetts. And our big rival was the IHOP because Bickford's was a chain in the New England area. So when I went to apply for work at the International House of Pancakes, I had that solid background in pancakes there. There was almost no denying me.
You had a pancake pedigree.
Yeah. But when I was very, very broke, which certainly I was when I was working at the IHOP, was very, very, very broke, I ate sugar and salt.
Packets?
Yeah. To me, to this day, dinner is a salt food. And then I love dessert. I'm not done until I've had a sugar food. And so I just sort of boiled the concept down when I had no money to. I would just eat salt.
For dinner.
Yeah. And then I would eat sugar.
For dessert.
Now, I must say that this period of time in the whole scope of things did not last that long. So I'm not trying to suggest that, I had a lifetime of poverty. I didn't. I was very lucky. I was born into a family in Alabama who moved to Massachusetts. My father was an engineer. We were, middle class, upper middle class. I wanted for nothing growing up. But when I did strike out on my own, because I had no skills, money was not an easy thing to come by. Things shifted with stand-up, and a lot of that really just had to do with time and place.
When we come back, Paula tries to convince Michael Pollan that ringdings are a very important food group. What would you choose to eat for your last meal?
Well, probably my favorite food in the world, ringdings.
Yes.
I'm from Massachusetts. I was raised in Massachusetts. I ended up in California because I was on a Greyhound bus. Yeah. And I fell in love with the audiences in San Francisco. And so I never moved back to Massachusetts after that. And one of the shocking things when I first, went to grocery stores in California was that they didn't have ringdings. Mm-hmm. And I kept going into stores asking, and I would even ask other people. I go, have ringdings? And they'd go, well, what's a ringding? Uh-huh. And then when I would describe it, well, it's a chocolate devil's food cake with a creamy filling and a rich, tasty chocolate outer coating. People would go like ding dongs.
Oh, is a ding dong the same as a ringding?
No.
Sorry, Paula.
Well, that's the thing. To me, these are fighting words.
Yeah, no, I can tell from your face, your voice, your energy.
How dare people? No, I don't really know the history, but my guess is that Hostess ripped off Drake's because Drake's makes ringdings. Hostess does make a product that looks like a ringding, and clearly the name, because it's a ding dong, copied that, but it just doesn't taste the same. And I have to say, since they did away with trans fats, which I'm glad they did that. It's not healthy, blah, blah, blah. Ringdings don't taste as good as they used to because it turns out trans fats were really yummy. But I'm willing to take that hit. But oh my gosh, it is a tasty treat. So what I found out after I moved to California is that they don't sell them there. Drake's products are only sold in 6 states, which I later found out because I followed a delivery truck once.
For how long?
Not that long. I followed them into a store. I followed them into a store, and then I asked the guy that was delivering in the store.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, we're only sold in 6 states.
I know this because, my mom is from New York and my whole family on my mom's side still lives there. And so when I was a kid and we would visit, I loved Devil Dogs, which is another Drake's product.
Another Drake's product, yes.
And
it doesn't have the rich, tasty chocolate outer coating.
No. And I loved it, though. And we weren't really allowed to eat stuff like that as a kid. So maybe that was part of it. But I have had a Twinkie, and I don't like Twinkies. I've had the Hostess chocolate cupcake. I don't like it. I still think that a Devil Dog is really good. So as a kid, I wrote a letter to Drake's, and I asked them if they would sell them in California. And a couple years ago, I found the letter that they wrote back to me. A woman named Debbie typed it on a typewriter on Drake's paper letterhead and very politely told me, no, we will never sell in California, and didn't send a free box or anything.
Wow, that's horrible.
I know.
That's terrible.
How do you get your ringdings? Do you have them sent? Do you get them on Amazon or something now?
No, I vacation in Massachusetts for a week every year and have forever. And so I usually eat a lot of them while I'm there.
Yeah, you camel up.
Occasionally my friends who live there will, pop a box in the mail to me. People think they don't go stale. That's not true. They do. I've eaten stale ones as well. I don't know.
Dip them in milk. Let them soak a little bit.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's a good point. You really could. So I think that is my favorite food.
Okay.
Maybe. Plus, I just like the box. The box somehow gives me joy. I don't know why. It's a happy box.
When you were a panelist many years ago on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, Michael Pollan was also a guest, and you told him that ringdings make your life worth living.
Yeah.
One of the things that has made my life worth living is ringdings. And I feel that it is food. Are you going to tell me that's not food?
There's a few simple tests to figure out if a ringding is food or not. How many ingredients does a ringding have?
A devil's food cake, 1.
Now, see, right there.
A creamy filling, 2. And a rich chocolate outer coating. What's the matter with you?
I think I would look at the package next time. That creamy is not cream. It
C-R-E-M-E-Y. Creamy. What the hell's the matter with you?
But there are special occasion foods. And
what do you mean special occasion? I said it's what makes my life worth living. Are you suggesting I save it for one day a year?
I wouldn't want to deprive you of your...
You know what? You may know a lot about food, but you don't know the first thing about living, buddy.
So many people came up to me after that, laughing about it and stuff. I was never able to follow up to make certain that I hadn't offended him. And
he sounded pretty affable. I listened to the whole segment, and it sounded like he was in on it, And it was actually kind of fun because I think, Michael Pollan, he is great, and people can get very serious about talking about nutritional food. I kind of admired you. I was listening to you, and you kind of just kept going at him, and I was like, oh my God, she has guts. I would never have the guts to keep on pushing up against Michael Pollan, kind of making fun of him for eating so healthy.
Another rule is don't eat any food that won't eventually rot. I had a Twinkie for 2 years. I owned a Twinkie that
Oh, you did not.
Really? I did. I have it. I didn't bring it with me. I have it on my shelf in my office, and I would give it a squeeze every couple of weeks to see how it was doing. And
that's not good for them.
And
you bruised your Twinkie.
2 years later, it was as soft and spongy as the day I bought it.
Okay, my problem, I try to teach my kids to eat healthy food, but you get a cantaloupe and you don't know when it's going to come of age. You have no idea that period between when it's hard as a rock to when it's smushy inside is about 10 minutes.
Right.
And
ring dings.
sometimes you got to wake the kids in the middle of the night because the cantaloupe's ready.
I certainly enjoy a healthy food here and there as well. But, you know, my passion for the ring ding.
In New York City's Tribeca neighborhood, inside the Duane Park Patisserie is the Ring Ding Bar, the brainchild of pastry chef and owner Madeline Lanciani.
You know, when I was a kid, it was a real special treat. That's what I'm building on.
Madeline was the first ever woman allowed to cook at the Plaza Hotel. That was in the 1970s, and she's been running the Duane Park Patisserie for 32 years. Supplying Manhattan and beyond with classic French and Viennese confections, eclairs, tarts, petit fours, and flourless chocolate cakes.
We've done stuff at the White House. I've had to sign a lot of NDAs over the years. We've done stuff for presidents, kings, queens, princesses, movie stars, etc., etc. And I'm just glad they like my food.
But in 2018, Madeline started selling homemade ring dings.
I started making my own little version of it for my own kids. Only mine were made out of what I call real ingredients, and they still are. My kids are adults, 38 and 35. But it was actually my son who, you know, when he was much younger, he said, Mom, these are really good. You ought to make them and sell them in the bakery. And I said, look, no one's going to know what they are. And he said, who cares? They're really good. So I kind of took his advice and I started making my version, which at first was just the chocolate and vanilla variety. And then I started thinking, well, you know, this is really good. And it's very easy to eat. It's small. It's tiny. You can walk around with it. It doesn't really need refrigeration for the day. So it can stay in your lunchbox or stay wherever you're going. So I started making different flavors. And now we have 25 flavors, all based on the same premise. 2 little layers of cake, some filling inside, dipped in chocolate. They're either dipped in white chocolate, which sometimes we color to match like strawberry shortcake ring ding. We color the white chocolate pink. Pumpkin pie ring ding, we color the white chocolate kind of an orangey. And then the others are dipped in dark chocolate or milk chocolate.
Sounds so good. So what is the filling? Is it buttercream, whipped cream?
We use buttercream. And our buttercream, it's called a Swiss meringue buttercream. It's made with cooked meringue and whipped butter. So it's very fluffy. So it's not the sickening sweet buttercream that quite often people associate with anything that has buttercream on it. However, some of our ring dings, one in particular, just has raspberry jam inside for people who don't want any cream at all.
Tell me a couple more flavors. What were the first couple that you came up with, and what are the last few that you came up with?
I love peanut butter myself. I eat peanut butter out of the jar without any jam or jelly, just the peanut butter. And I like chocolate. So one of the first ones I did after the classic chocolate and vanilla was I call it a PB&J. So we make our own raspberry jam. So it's peanut butter, raspberry jam, and chocolate. And those 3 flavor combinations are delicious. And I added some kind of like lighter kind of flavors like lemon cake with just very light lemon cream filling. And it's iced in white chocolate that's tinted a little yellow. And then a few years ago, I think it was like right before COVID, in June for Pride Month, one of my customers said, you ought to have a rainbow ring ding. And I said, why not? So we started making our rainbow ring dings, which are actually next to the classic. It's actually our bestseller because they're fun. They're cool looking and they taste great.
So what does the company that makes the original ring dings think about the Ring Ding Bar?
I have to tell you a fun story. The company who owns the trademark is McKee Kingman Foods. They bought Drake's, 20 years ago. I can't remember. When I first started selling these and they started getting a good online presence, My longtime attorney said, you can't use that name. And I said, yeah, I know. I'll just wait until I get a cease and desist. So eventually I get a letter from McKee Foods, but it's not a cease and desist. It's, we see you're making this and calling them ringdings. We're okay with you using the name as long as you don't venture into our market, which is supermarket sales. And I said, no intention of selling in supermarkets. And unbeknownst to me, they had been ordering my product for me to ship to them, for them to taste. And when their president retired like 5 years ago, they ordered my ringdings for his retirement party.
Wow, what an honor, and how cool to come full circle for you loving this product as a kid, and now they're eating yours. Yeah, and also, like, what a nice story, because you never hear of a company reaching out and being so generous. That's so nice.
It's a fun story, and I'm proud,
And then there is the time-honored question. The question that if we don't ask ourselves during our lifetimes, we will ask ourselves on our deathbed. Which came first, the ring-ding or the ding-dong? Well, Paula's ring-dings were created by Drake's in 1958, and Hostess didn't start making ding-dongs until 1967. These little snack cakes are very, very similar, so Hostess most likely ripped off the idea. Oh, actually, they were called ding-dongs on the West Coast, but they were legally obligated to sell them under the name Big Wheels on the East Coast so that they didn't interfere with ring-ding business. And in Canada, they're called King Dons. Anyway, after the break, Paula tells a great story about the time Dick Van Dyke finally came to one of her parties after years of ignoring her invites, and what he saw her doing in her kitchen that made him never want to come back. Ringdings are the main course of Paula Poundstone's last meal, but our little sugar booger has a couple other desserts she'd like to see on the menu.
One of my favorite foods, I don't really eat it so much anymore because it can cause some digestive problems. But before I became aware of that, I was blissfully happy. But then when I became aware of that, I would still eat this food, but I would do it knowing that there was another shoe to drop, which is a fluff and nutter sandwich. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
It's a very Massachusetts thing. It's marshmallow fluff and peanut butter. And the great thing is that they had the recipe on the jar, which always made me laugh. Like, it's not that complicated, really.
Yeah.
But there it was on the jar. But on the lid of the fluff and nutter jar, it had a recipe for something called Never Fail Fudge. It wasn't a huge lid. And so it was in pretty small print. And we were at my neighbor's house one day, the Rosses, my best friends, and they were the fun house. And Janet Ross and my older sister decided to make the Never Fail Fudge, and their mom was out. And the recipe calls for 2.5 cups of sugar. But because the lid was small and the print was small, they read it as 21 half cups of sugar.
So they divided 21 in half?
I believe that they actually used a half cup for measuring. I don't think they
really
said,
cute.
well, let's do 10 cups and then a half.
Yeah.
I think they did 21 half cups. Best fudge I ever ate in my life.
Are you serious?
Oh my God, I love sugar.
The next course is pecan pie.
I hate nuts. So when I eat pecan pie, I suck the nuts off and spit them out.
We will not cut that little part and use it out of context. When you make it, why don't you just make it without the nuts? Why don't you just make treacle pie?
I think you could do that probably, but it also, years and years ago, I came across a recipe. I suspect it was on a box of grape nuts for pecan pie without the pecans, but with grape nuts in their stead. That was delicious because it had this great crunchy on top. And then, my favorite part, the treacly part.
Yeah. My friend who's from Massachusetts, he just made speaking of the grape nuts, he made a grape nuts pie. It's on the back of the box and it's a Massachusetts thing. I hadn't heard of it or had it. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like a layer of custard and then there's grape nuts. Hold on. Grape nuts, Massachusetts dessert. Old-fashioned grape nut pudding.
No, I never heard of that.
It's good. So wait, just to make sure I get it here. So for your last meal, do you want ring dings and a pecan pie with the pecans picked off and a marshmallow fluff sandwich?
I don't think it's too much to ask.
I don't either.
And if it's my last meal, then I don't have to worry about any kind of digestive problems. So yes.
Nope. You really do have a sweet tooth. I love it. Do you want a big glass of milk to go with this dessert feast?
No, I don't drink milk anymore.
Okay.
I mean, I probably hadn't drank milk in a long, long time anyways, but I think it was on the documentary. What is it? Forks Over Knives, maybe? It was
is this the one that makes everyone go vegan?
Yeah. One of the main narrators of the documentary was raised on a dairy farm. And he points out that, the real purpose of cow's milk is to fatten up a bovine. When it's put that way, it is a bit of a turnoff. So
it is a weird thought. Okay, so years ago, I got fixated on this idea of I wanted to taste a friend's breast milk because I didn't want to have children. It was never going to be my thing and I wanted to taste it. Of course, everybody you tell is like, ew, it's so gross. But then we drink cow's milk, which is the breast milk of another species that's supposed to be for their baby. And that's totally normal.
Yeah. I was eating with a friend one time and we were in a restaurant and he had ordered I don't know, steak or hamburger or something, very meat, beef centered. Yeah. And they had a salad before or something. And there was a hair in his salad. And, I don't want a hair in my salad either. But he was very upset about it. And I was like, there's a hair in my salad. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but we're about to eat the flesh.
Yeah.
Another animal. It's sort of funny to get that upset about a hair.
One thing that I saw, I read this story and I was like, oh God, we have this in common. I've never heard of anyone else doing this. You were talking about this party that you do annually and that at the end of the night or sometimes midway through, you go through the garbage and first of all, you separate, and you recycle some things, but you pull out the plastic plates and you wash them and you use them again. I do this too. I do it with cups, mostly plastic cups because I'm an environmentalist and I just can't stand that they're going to get thrown away. I was so happy to read that you did that as well.
Yeah, we did. So I had this party one time and they're not celebrity parties, although occasionally someone that I know through work, comes. The majority of the people who come used to be anyways, people that I knew through my kids' elementary school, for example. And I send out tons of invitations. One year, Dick Van Dyke comes and people run out to me and the party's in the backyard. We play ping pong and people are like, Dick Van Dyke's in your living room. And I kind of knew that he might come. And I said to him when I came in the house and I said, oh, I'm so glad you're here, blah, blah, blah. And his lovely wife, and he said, I'm so glad you're here. And I said, Dick, I've been sending you invitations for 15 years. I said, did you know who they were from? He said, yeah. And I went, okay, so it was just plain rejection. That's good. It wasn't a misunderstanding. He just simply wasn't going to come. But so somebody talked him into coming, not me, somebody else. And this was probably several years ago. So he was probably 90. Certainly wasn't going to play ping pong. So he's sitting on the porch watching people play ping pong and talking with people and being very gracious, very Dick Van Dyke. But where he was sitting was right beside a trash can. So this friend of mine comes up to me and she goes, Paula, we're all out of plates. And I'm like, So I go, okay, we got to get him out of the trash can. Now, Dick Van Dyke, who's not going to play ping pong, but, he might have some food, maybe. I don't know, maybe. But now he sees us pulling plates out of the trash can. I don't know if he knows what I'm going to do with them, but it may have put the kibosh even on his appetite that night.
And I know why I haven't come for the last 15 years. I didn't really know why until this moment.
Yeah. Wouldn't have lived to be 90 if he, or 98.
Or maybe he would. You need that good bacteria, in your gut.
Yeah. Boy, am I providing that. No, you know what I finally did? And I don't know why I didn't do this many, many years ago. I finally bought real plates for the party. How about that? Never even occurred to me until about I don't know, 4 years ago. All those years, I've given like 70 something of basically the same party.
Yeah.
People still use various plastic things, and I still take them out of the trash and wash them. You generally not right in front of the guests, though.
Well, good for you. You have evolved.
I really have. My level of maturity is astounding even to me.
And that was Paula Poundstone's last meal. Paula takes off for tour tomorrow. She has show dates running all the way through August, including some spots in my neck of the woods, Vashon Island in February and Tacoma in June. You can find tickets to all of her shows in the show notes of this show, or go to paulapoundstone.com/tour.
Thank you very much. It was really, really fun. Okay, wait, I have to tell you one more story.
Tell me.
Okay, so my son was, and he probably had his reasons.
To hear that story and a speed round that I did with Paula, tune in next Thursday to The Leftovers with Paula Poundstone. You'll find it right here in the Your Last Meal feed. Your Last Meal is a product of Seattle's Cascade PBS. This episode was produced with Maliha Syed and mixed and mastered by Sarah Bernard. Original theme music by Prom Queen. And I created, host, and co-produce Your Last Meal. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if you like the show, please, please, please do us a solid and leave us a review in Apple Podcasts. It really does help keep us in business. If you're new to the podcast, I just released my first cookbook. It's called Open Sesame. That came out back in November. And I have one more cookbook event on the calendar. I'm doing a book talk at the Mercer Island JCC on Sunday, February 2nd. They'll be serving my famous hummus from the book, and I'll be around to sign books and schmooze after the talk. If you already bought the book, you can buy a less expensive ticket to the event that doesn't include one. And if you buy a ticket to this event, you are automatically entered into a raffle to win a copy of Open Sesame and a jar of Soom Tahini, one of my favorite brands. So you can go home and start cooking immediately. Get tickets to the event at hellorachelbell.com or find a link in the show notes. I'm Rachel Bell, and this is Your Last Meal.